Welcome to A Fortnight on the Isle. I'm your host, King Crusoe. You can call me KC, and boy oh boy has it been quite the fortnight and also quite the month for me. This video comes out right on the very first day of March. We're heading into a new month, and reflecting on February, it was just kind of a crazy month for me personally in a lot of ways, but you know, breaking down the entire month of February is not the task for this video. That is a task for Wednesday. Today, we're just going to be covering the last couple of weeks, which, to be fair, have still been pretty busy in their own right in some ways, but not so much on the first category or the first order of business for this video. Let's just go ahead and begin like I normally do with the bi-weekly reading. You can see timestamps down below for any of the other sections that you're more interested in, or whatever it is that you want to check out in this video. Whichever channel you're watching this on doesn't matter much to me. But my reading this fortnight was pretty slow. I confess that I actually had a little bit of a slump in the middle of February, basically as soon as I finished reading The Gathering Storm a couple of weeks ago, and I was continuing Penance of Blood because I had started the book by the time the last Fortnight on the Isle came out. By the time I recorded it, I had gotten through... I don't remember entirely how far I was, but I was, you know, no small portion into it. I want to say I was probably like a sixth of the way in or something like that. And when I tried to continue the book after finishing The Gathering Storm, it was just a struggle for whatever reason, and I had probably about a week and a half, pretty close to 2 weeks, where I read very little to nothing each day of this book. And in fact, at the day that I'm recording this, right at the very end of February, I barely finished this morning, and the fact that I did finish it is kind of a surprise. I finally accepted, like, this past Tuesday or something like that, like, I'm just in a reading slump. I don't know when I'm going to be able to pick up a book at the moment. I just am not in the mood. Fortunately, I managed to pick it up and read like 20 pages on Wednesday morning. I didn't feel myself forced to do that, but I wanted to do that. And then the back half of this book was good enough that it broke through the worst part of the slump. I was interested enough in continuing the book and finishing it that I managed to finish it in time for this video, at least, which is good. I'm glad for that. Like I said, the back half of the book was the reason that happened. Back half of this book is really good. I mean, the front half is good too. If you want something that's brief, it's less than 300 pages, but with a very solid dark fantasy setting that, quite frankly, has a shockingly limited scope for it being a web serial. Sure, it's just the first book, it's just the first arc of the story, but the scope is limited. It's got a great dark fantasy tone and vibe. There's not any elements of the plot or character or anything that appears in here that is wasted, that isn't, you know, brought to fruition in the end. So I think it's definitely worth checking out for that, for something that's pretty simple and easy to read, isn't too complex, doesn't have a whole ton going on, despite having hints at some pretty big things going on in the background. It doesn't ever let any of that encroach on the plot, which is why it's able to be less than 300 pages instead of 600 pages or some epic fantasy nonsense. Like, no, this is a little bit shorter than that, and it's kind of refreshing for that reason. I thought it definitely did well on that front. But that is all that I actually got read over the last couple weeks. I thought that I would get a lot more read based off of how I've been reading so far in January and then the first half of February. But like I said, I did have a solid week or week and a half there this fortnight where I did not read basically anything. I want to say there was a 2-week span where I read, I want to say like 50 pages of this book, and that was it over 2 entire weeks. So that explains why there's not much to talk about here. But over this upcoming fortnight, the task is to read Towers of Midnight. Oh, look at that. The shade of Matt's shirt in here is the exact range of green screen that you can see right through them. But yeah, Towers of Midnight is now the next book on the docket, and some people might be wondering, it's just like, oh, you were just in a slump, you're gonna go right back into the Wheel of Time. And yeah, actually, I think I would not have had the slump the same way if I had actually started Towers of Midnight as soon as I finished The Gathering Storm, ironically enough, because I was so hyped with that book and so excited to just continue. Fortunately, finishing Penance of Blood has brought me back into that mood, and I do have have Wheel of Time diaries to be posting every Thursday this month. We'll talk more about upcoming releases a little bit later, so I need to be reading Towers of Midnight anyway, so I'm going to be pushing through these first few days to get through enough of that I can at least make a diary on it. Whether or not it actually fully breaks my slump, like for the rest of March or something like that, I don't know. That's yet to be determined, but that is how my reading went these last couple of weeks. But that'll take us into the bi-weekly gaming, where kind of similar to the last update video where I had quite a bit to talk about in this section, I also have a decent amount to talk about in this section. And, you know, in light of having a reading slump and not being able to do much there, I've been catching up on some work-related stuff. I wrote a lot of words for reviews, catching up on game reviews and book reviews and stuff like that over the last couple weeks. But a lot of my free time was basically just spent gaming this fortnight, and that was honestly kind of a relief. I was very glad to be able to enjoy myself a little bit, doing something a little bit different. It was a little bit of a change of pace, just gaming more each day rather than forcing myself to read when I wasn't in the mood. So, you know, over the last couple of weeks, I've been continuing to play Ghost of Yotei. I'm about a third of the way through the game now. I've played, at the time of recording this, I played about 15 hours of that game on stream. By the time this video goes up, that'll probably be somewhere around 20 hours because there will have been another stream on Saturday to include in that. And then I've also played an additional 5 or so hours off stream of that game, basically just doing a bunch of side stuff in the initial area so that I could get a couple more upgrades, just generally clean up my to-do list and stuff like that in the game before moving on to the next main story mission. So I at this point, like I said, when I'm recording, I don't actually know where I'm at specifically after that last stream, but we'll assume it's somewhere around 20 hours in the game. I might be, you know, somewhere approaching halfway through, but I doubt I make that much progress in just one more stream. In either case, the other things that I did get through was, in the last update video, I had talked about how it was coming out just a few hours before I did a stream of Reanimal, and I played that this fortnight. And not only did I play it that one time on stream, I also played it a second time shortly afterwards to 100% the game and to get the platinum, and then I did a third run of the game hosting a co-op playthrough with a friend. So I played through Reanimal for a total of, I want to say, how does math work here? Somewhere around 11 hours or so I spent in this game doing 3 playthroughs of it. I think it's a genuinely fantastic evolution of Little Nightmares, and I highly recommend it for that reason. I actually reviewed the game last fortnight, where I had initially not necessarily planned to, or rather not anticipated for that to be a video, but we'll again talk about that a little bit later. A couple of other gaming things that I did was I played through Grime 2's demo, and that was great. It did come out last fortnight. I anticipated that it would come out at some point over this past fortnight, but it actually came out a little bit earlier than I intended to, and came alongside the full game's release date of March 31st, so you can expect a little bit of coverage on that game. More on that later. And I also threw in a playthrough of BioShock 2. I've been meaning to do a Let's Play of this game for a long time, and now that I'm been done with Alan Wake for a couple of weeks, I decided to just get the BioShock 2 Let's Play done ahead of time. Unfortunately, I did have some weird audio bug issues with a lot of stuff the last month or so of recording, and I have not actually gone through that Let's Play footage to determine if it's usable, so it might not be salvageable. I might either have to redo the Let's Play or just scrap the Let's Play entirely. We'll see, but I did play through the game and its DLC over this fortnight in either case. Unfortunately, it's, you know, not very memorable compared to the first game, even though I did enjoy it. It's just that it takes no real swings, but I do think that the DLC is great. That's actually worth playing for sure, even though the base game is relatively overall meh, but, you know, that's just the way things go sometimes. Some things that I do plan to play this fortnight are God of War Sons of Sparta. I believe I mentioned this last time. I actually planned to play that, you know, before March actually happened, but in light of choosing to record the Let's Play for BioShock 2, whether or not that is actually usable, we'll see, but deciding to do that meant that I did not play Sons of Sparta this fortnight, so that'll probably be something that I do this fortnight. That's the only real plans for gaming that I have these next couple of weeks, because I think next week I'll have plenty of time for gaming. There's a chance that I replay Alan Wake Remastered to do platinum, like do the hard run on it. That's debatable. Same thing with Bioshock 2 Remastered. I'll probably do another run of that. If I need to re-record the Let's Play, I'll just do another run of that and make it a 100% run on. Again, not entirely sure, but those are a couple things that I might end up doing at some point these next couple of weeks. But playing that Shadow Dropped God of War game is definitely the one priority this fortnight. As for the bi-weekly cinema, I did watch one film over the last couple of weeks, and that was American Psycho, which I really enjoyed watching. You know, everything that is great about that book is in the film without all of the tedium. You know, there's a couple of notable scenes from the book that aren't in the movie, for better or worse, but overall, I think that the general, whatever it was that the book, or that story is trying to achieve, was carried over into the film. The filmmaker understood it intrinsically. Christian Bale understood Patrick Bateman's character intrinsically, and that made for a really enjoyable viewing experience, no matter how awkward and psychotic it can be at times. My only plans for things to watch this fortnight are, I did basically just kind of as a random idea, I nailed down a full season review of the Pendragon cycle, The Rise of Merlin, that has come out pretty recently on Daily Wire, and I decided to take up an offer to actually watch through that, and I'm going to do a full season review of that at some point this month, so I need to actually watch the show. It's only 7 episodes, 7 hours, so I'm going to try to get through all of that this fortnight so I can have that video actually done in time. I'm really curious to see how it goes down. You know, it's a little bit of an Arthurian myth type of thing, which I have strangely unfamiliar with for the most part. I actually don't know a ton beyond very basics of that mythos, and it also takes in a slightly more actively Christian direction, which I'm curious about, based off of books by Stephen Lawhead or something like that. I probably have that author name completely messed up, but in either case, I'll probably just watch that show this fortnight so that I can make a video about it, just for the sake of making a video about it, because that sounds like fun for sure. But yeah, that is my plans for the moment. In terms of the upcoming releases, we are once again following up on the shoes of the last couple of these updates. Have videos coming out or a stream every day these next couple of weeks. I had a video or a stream come out every single day in February, and I have the same thing planned in March. Every day, which is pretty crazy, but that is the way things go. The first thing that I did want to mention was last Wednesday. Like I said, I did do a brief review of Reanimal, which replaced another video that it was originally going to be. It was going to be a brief review of Power Wash Simulator, just kind of as a random thing to cover to fill up a video space there that Wednesday. But then I realized, like, while editing that last video, that I was going to be streaming the Reanimal game and planned to be able to stream the entire thing in one go. Why am I not just doing that as a brief review? So I decided to do that instead. That came out on Wednesday. It ended up not being very brief. I think that video is almost like 37 minutes long or something. I think that video is longer than the Claire Obscure brief review was, which is crazy. It's not very brief, but that is the way things go sometimes. But as for what is actually coming out over the next couple of weeks, let's start with tomorrow on the 2nd of March will be Music Mania episode 23, which will be ranking, of course, all of the new metal albums and stuff like that that I checked out that were released in February 2026. There's a little bit more to talk about this month than there was in January, so I'm pretty excited about that. There's a couple really solid releases there. On Tuesday the 3rd on the main channel will be my February Book of the Month / reading wrap-up video plus my March TBR video. So, you know, you already know a good bit of what I read in February and what I plan to read in March on account of this video, but that one will go more into detail about the entire month in either case. On Wednesday the 4th will be my March State of Affairs video, so of course my monthly update, actually going over February as far as statistics and stuff like that goes, and then making some brief plans for what March is going to look like as a whole. So that'll come out here in just a few days, and that'll be linked between both of my channels. It'll probably be linked with the third channel as well, because there was that short story that I wrote that I talked about in the last one of these Fortnite on the Isle videos. I'll probably mention that in that video as well, so it'll probably be linked between all three of my channels. In either case, on Thursday the 5th will be the first episode of the Wheel of Time Diaries covering Towers of Midnight specifically. That was already nailed down, so I gotta make sure that I get, at least 100 or 150 pages read of that, but I do plan to read about 200 pages a week, obviously, for those 4 videos. So the first episode of that will be coming out this Thursday. On the second channel on Friday the 6th will be the 5th episode of the Alan Wake Let's Play. That's pretty simple. And then on the 7th, on Saturday, I plan to stream Ghost of Yotei again for the 5th time. Next week, on Sunday the 8th, on the main channel will be my review of The Gathering Storm, so I'll actually be reviewing that book, and it'll be the one and only time where a review for a Wheel of Time book comes after the diaries for the next book have already started to release, technically, obviously, but because it's only a few days difference, it should be okay. That will be out next Sunday. I'm excited for that review. On Monday the 9th, which will be a video posted on the second channel, but will also be included on the main channel. That'll be Movie Magic Episode 16, reviewing American Psycho, just briefly going over all the things that I think that movie does well from both from a filmmaking standpoint, but especially from an adaptation standpoint, hence why it's going to be part of the main channel, because it's an adaptation of the book, and I talk about the book to some degree in that video, so that'll be next Monday. On Tuesday the 10th on the main channel will be, this video is not 100% set in stone, but it will most likely be a video analyzing my favorite books of 2022 through 2024. So basically a follow-up to, an addition to the KC canon as far as everything's concerned. In the middle of 2025, I did my favorite books of all time and my favorite series of all time. I did a couple of those videos there, and then of course, just a couple of months ago, I did my favorite books of 2025, and I talked about the couple of books there that were like really worthy of shouting out. So I'm not 100% sure. I might incorporate 2022 through 2025 entirely in that. I'm not 100% sure, but what I'm basically going to do is I plan to go through all of my books of the month, every month since starting the channel basically, as well as my book of the year lists, and kind of determine what of those picks, what of those options, what of those selections of mine have held up. What were the reasons for those, and what I think about them now in retrospect, especially with regard to like 2022 and 2023. I think that'll be pretty interesting to look at, because it's been long enough that I don't actually remember a lot of those in some cases. So yeah, that'll be exciting. On Wednesday, the 11th, will be an impressions video, only the second time that I've done one of these, talking about Grime 2, the demo impression. So I did one of these for Crowsworn last year, or did I post that video that must have been last year. It had to have been last year. Anyway, I did an impressions video for Crowsworn, the backer demo of that came out, because I wanted to, and because I wanted to be able to talk about that game in some format before it comes out, because it's still going to be a little while before it comes out. But Grime 2 comes out at the very end of March, and the updated demo just released a couple of weeks ago. I played it and enjoyed it and decided I wanted to post impressions of that ahead of the actual full game coming out, so that'll be out next Wednesday. I think that video is solid, and also nowhere near as long as the impressions video for Crowsworn, so that's also pretty good. Thursday the 12th will just be the second episode of Wheel of Time Diaries about Towers of Midnight. Nothing too super crazy or special there. Kind of a similar thing on Friday the 13th. Oh boy, that'll be the 6th episode of the Alan Wake Let's Play. Of course, that'll be finishing up the base game. Not 100% done with that Let's Play yet, because there are a couple of DLCs, so those will be still coming out through the end of the month, but the end of the base game will be happening next Friday. And then next Saturday on the 14th will be the 6th live stream playing through Ghost of Yotei. And for now, that is, I'm not 100% sure how long it's going to actually take me to stream through all of Ghost of Yotei, but I think it'll probably take somewhere between 8 and 10 full streams, so I don't think I'll be done with the game yet at the end of the 6th one. I'd be very surprised if I was, but for now, that is what I have planned at the moment. As for some, more miscellaneous stuff, what's going to be happening this fortnight. In the last update, I did talk about how rough of a time I was having personally, and a lot of this fortnight unfortunately felt super long because that did continue for a little bit. A lot of what was driving that little reading slump that I had was just being in a headspace where I just couldn't get myself to read because of where I was personally. In total, I did have a period of, like 2 to 3 weeks where I was just completely out of it and really struggling with a lot of stuff. But fortunately, I can say this time and this fortnight that I'm coming out of the worst of it, I think. Hypomania can be pretty unpredictable, and often I think that I'm coming out of the worst of it right before going back down into another swing. But no, I do genuinely feel like this time around I'm much more stable. I've been doing a lot of good personal growth work, been trying to work on that rather intentionally alongside video work and stuff like that. I've been studying religious stuff a little bit more, just getting a little bit back into a better overall mindset, not just distracting myself with work like I was for a lot of this year so far, but like actually pulling through and trying to overcome that a little bit more actively. I still haven't really managed to incorporate a lot of like physicality into my routine yet this year, but I have managed to get into, like I said, overcoming a lot of that strife, we shall call it. But in general, March is definitely looking to be very up compared to what a lot of February was, and I have my fingers crossed that that is the case. But all of that being said, I've once again gone on a little bit longer than I intended with this update video, and like I already mentioned earlier as well, I did post a video or stream every single day last month. I have that identical output, like I mentioned, for March every single day, and I've done a ton of work for that already, to be fair, but I've still got a lot left to do, and this week right now, my main focus is basically finishing all of that March content, essentially. Like, as much as I'm physically able to do, I'm going to be doing that this week. And as a result, any of my gaming or relaxation or stuff like that will probably be next week, but I'll let you know how all of that went, in the next one of these updates in a couple of weeks. But for now, I have been your host, King Crusoe. You can call me KC, and I hope to see you guys in the next video, whichever one of those, like 15 trillion of them it might be.